So, how you doing, everybody? It is thesis season. Man, time to get the thesis written. And talking to all my fellow students and colleagues, it's a hell of a ride. So, I was talking to my advisor over in school, and he says to me, "Joe, why are you so mad?" Let's find out on the next podcast. So, how you doing, everybody? Joe here from United States Technologies. So, I'm in my advisor's office, and he's looked at and read quite a bit of my work. And I went in and met with him and talked about my study and getting it in front of the IRB and how we're going to do it. And he just kind of stopped and he looked at me and he said, "Joe, why are you so mad?" Kind of an odd question. But then I stopped and I thought back at the stuff that I write, and it does kind of have a pissed off undertone to it. So why am I so mad? So I had to stop and I had to think about this question. Good question, by the way. So let me explain what happened. Back in my journeyman days, I was working in the field, I was working in a substation, and I was involved in an accident. Now, I wasn't the one that got hurt, but, I mean, you guys have heard this one in the past, I guess, on other podcasts. But I spent quite a bit of time trying to resuscitate a colleague and friend of mine that made an electrical contact with a 230,000 volt line. Now, that sounds bad, but the circuit was off and he was hit with induced voltage. I mean, it still was bad. I mean, it stopped his heart. And he went through a year of agonizing therapy and surgeries and, just to get back. He currently now, he's alive and he currently has memory loss. But I mean, it was a big turning point in my life. This is when I decided. I was in college at the time, and I was a business major. So this was the event that made me stop and wonder, and just it ate me up. Why did this happen? Why did this guy do this? Why did this happen? And I started researching that on my own free time, and I changed my major to industrial organizational psychology. And I'm currently pursuing a graduate degree, and I'd like to hopefully get to the ultimate PhD, but we'll see how that goes. Anyway, so explain what happened. So going through this, working for an electric utility, we went through this, and one of the first things that kind of, when I stopped and thought about the process on how these things come together, and from investigation to how managers feel and leaders feel, one of the first things that happened was when our leader, showed up to the site. This happened in the middle of the night, probably around 1 o'clock in the morning. When he showed up, it was like 5 in the morning. I remember the sun coming up. And he had gotten out of his truck and he approached us all, asked if we were all okay. He almost had to remind himself to ask that, it seemed like. And one of the first things out of his mouth was, we got to get this line back. A lot of money right in here. So his state of mind was, okay, I'm talking to the crew that just witnessed and just went through this traumatic experience, but you're going to go back to work on this line where your colleague, somebody close to you, was hurt. Yeah, let that sink in for a minute. Luckily, right after he said that, another vehicle pulled in, and it was the former manager of or leader of this department. And he came out, he overheard what was said, and he said, "You know what? We're not going to do that. We got to take these guys in, and they have to go through the process of your analysis. We're going to shut them down." However, 12 hours later, we were on our way down to another location to do the same exact work. And we were going to do this all over again. So this is what I started to realize, that the process is just totally broken, So, things go on. They have an investigation and they bring us in and they tell us what OSHA found and yada, yada, yada. Well, you're in this room and you're full of people that do this work. And in front of this room, you have the managers of the people that do this work. And they're telling us what they found. And then other people, these people come in and they investigate and they tell us what happened. Interesting. So, what do you think happened in that room? The manager there said, well, what happened, guys? We explained to him. How could this have been prevented? We explained to him. We need different equipment. We need booms that are fiberglass insulated, not total, just completely steel booms that we were working in. Other utilities would probably laugh at us or just kind of look at us like we had 12 heads because of our methods, we were working in a boom. We were working out of a boom that was completely steel. So no duh, you touch that line, something's going to happen. But when we explained this to the managers, it kind of went in one ear and out the other, because the price tag on a boom with fiberglass on it was probably, it's huge. Everything that we suggested, everything that we talked about as far as methods and grounding first tower out and grounding, all of those things were out the door. Nobody listened. It was what the managers were going to tell us, what they had planned to tell us. And that was it. And what happened was they just did the same thing over. They investigated it. They found out what was wrong. And of course, it was human error. It was the guy's fault that we had the accident. And here's the rule that we're going to design. And this is how you guys are going to abide by it. Don't do it again. You guys take care of yourselves. We care about you. And then we'll put this new rule in our accident prevention manual, which is already 4 inches thick. We'll put that rule in there, which it already existed. We'll put that in there, and you know what? We're going to come up with a new position. That position is the qualified observer, and all he can do, or he or she can do, is stand on the ground and watch the people work. Well, when do we activate this qualified observer? Well, the qualified observer will be activated on systems over 115,000 volts. Well, when the guy was working on that line, it was de-energized. But we feel that 115 is the adequate threshold. If we break the threshold of 115,000 volts, we'll add another person on the crew, and that person will do nothing but watch. Okay, so we have minimal crew members. We're not going up in head count. So how are we going to do this? So that aspect wasn't very well thought out. Okay, so if there's not a qualified observer that is going to be available, do we continue to work or do we shut down? Do we sit around and wait for one? First problem. So you guys can kind of see where I'm going now. And then why the 115,000 volt threshold? I mean, it only takes an eighth of an amp to kill you. And the foreman is kind of the guy who's supposed to be watching what you're doing anyway. So I can go on for hours and hours about how this new rule or this plan is wrong. Or it wasn't well thought out. So what they did was, if you look at that accident prevention manual, you'll find a rule where somebody was seriously injured or killed. Just like all the other rules. That's what they tell you. These rules were in this accident prevention manual because somebody got hurt. It's a blood book. These rules are blood rules. Someone got hurt, and that's why they're in here. So, in other words, this APM is a book that recorded what went wrong, and then it also recorded how you dealt with that problem, which is the same way over and over. You investigated it, you blamed it on a person, you wrote a rule, and then you demanded obedience. Once again, you better follow our rules. Then, several weeks later, another guy gets hurt. Doesn't get electrocuted, but he gets hurt. And it goes all the way up the chain. The brass, or the top guy, one of the top guys, goes ahead and he fires that guy. I need to set a precedence. And he fires him. Meanwhile, there's a manager walking around, and he demands that people place a cone around their vehicle. And if you don't, I'm going to write you up. This is my rule. This is going to, get me some good attention. And so you guys have a rule. So you can kind of hear in my voice, in my tone, that I'm really pissed off at managers. And why is that? Managers tend to think, well, where I came from, they tend to think they're smarter than you, and they have all the answers because they were given a title. And they don't want to listen to what the front line has to say. They do, but when they walk out, it's all gone. And you can see this in their actions. I once worked for a manager that it was his idea to put a cone around, two cones, one in the front, one in the back. And you see a lot of utilities doing this. You see a lot of companies that operate a large fleet. They require you put cones around it. And that's set up to encourage you to do a walk around your vehicle before you drive away. But what it really does is it encourages a person to go pick up the cone, focus on the cone, walk back to the rear of the truck, and focus on the other cone and throw it in the truck, get in the truck, and drive away. That's all it does. It is a rule. And that's all it turns out to be. A person walking to the front, grabbing the cone, walking to the back, grabbing the cone, and putting them away. There's no walk around. And that's what this manager, his claim to fame is. I did the cones. This manager, I don't even know what he was. He wasn't an accountant. He wasn't like a designer, or I don't know what he was. I do know that he really likes to, he's really big into taxidermy. Not much of a guy either. He's not very much a man of his word. So he doesn't have the respect of the front line at all whatsoever. But that's neither here nor there. So yeah, I'm pissed off. Why am I pissed off? Because they never learn. Managers never learn. If these managers had an accounting system, let's say they bought this new software, and the software had corrupt code written into it, they would seek out, and this corrupt code cost them a lot of money. Well, the first thing they'd say is seek out that corrupt code and get rid of it. Fix it. Correct it. Boom. Makes sense, right? Or like I've said before, you buy a stock, it doesn't perform, you sell it, you get rid of it. You don't go back, right? But in mainstream safety, that's not what happens. They just keep doing the same thing over and over and over again. And then I remember the same team of managers, they bring you all in, they bring you in this big meeting room, and they stand up in front of you and they say, what are we doing wrong, guys? What are we doing wrong? As if to say, management and the front line, what are we doing wrong? That's when you know that safety system is so cumbersome, they don't even know what's going on anymore. They don't know what to do. Because no matter how many rules they write, nobody's listening. That's their concept. If everybody would listen to me, if they would just listen to what I have to tell them, nothing would happen. If they would follow the rules, nothing would happen. The problem with these managers is they don't know how to work with people. A lot of these managers are engineers. A lot of these managers are CPAs. A lot of these managers come up through the tools. They came up and they worked in the trenches and they're working their way up. They go and get business degrees. But none of them know how to work with people. They don't know how people think. And if you try to explain this to them, they think that they know better than you and they're not going to listen. They tell you that it was poorly rolled out. That's what happened to me as I was coming up through the ranks with my psychology degree, is that they told me that my idea was poorly rolled out. But yet everybody around me thought this was a good idea, that I'm on to something. Get the people involved. Develop a user-centered program. Participatory designs. What's interesting is that, while I'm doing this, I'm thinking I'm the only guy around that's coming up with these ideas. And just this past week, I find this whole gaggle of people that think the same way I do. They call it new safety, or they call it safety different. And there's a whole gaggle of doctors and people that, people with their PhDs, and they believe the same way. And there's like this big movement going on, and I'm like, holy cow, I thought I was the only guy doing this. And then there they are. Great resource that I found. And who told me about this resource was my current VP of safety. He had told me about all these different podcasts I can listen to, and there are people that think the same way him and I do. So I'm thankful for him for that. Man, it just opened up so many new doors, and I don't quite feel so alone now, but I feel disheartened. I mean, that just goes to show my ego, right? My ego is telling me, I'm thinking up this whole new idea, and it's been out there for years and years. Well, actually, Decker's the one that kind of got me going, reading Decker, and I think I have every one of his books, except the new one. Something about heaven. I forgot the name of his book. Or Heaven Vanishing or something. I don't know. But Decker would just explain the problems that we were having, and I thought I came up with a solution on how to implement participatory designs in people. So that's what I want to talk about also, is I want you guys to think about something real quick. We come from a society based on rules, right? And as we come up as children, we're taught not to break the rules. First, we're taught the rules. Don't look both ways before you cross. Don't talk to your parents. Respect your elders. Blah, blah, blah. Ask for this. Children are seen, not heard. And we're brought up when we're taught all the rules. And then when we break those rules, we're punished, right? Then we get old enough to drive cars, and we start evolving deeper and deeper into society. We learn the societal rules into school, and we're taught, you sit at your desk and you use, you don't write with a pen, you write with a pencil, and blah, you're just taught all of these rules. And you're taught not to break them, or if you do, you will be punished, right? You'll be grounded, or you have detention, or what have you. And that's the same way safety is. When you enter into the workforce, whether you choose an academic, or if you choose one of the hard hat industries, we come into this new world with the understanding is that you know how to be safe, because all you have to do to be safe is follow the rules. And that's where this mainstream safety that I call mainstream safety, what we're dealing with now, that's where that retributive system has just kind of drifted in and into safety, and that is not safety. You look up any definition, Webster's dictionary says safety is the freedom from hazards or dangers. It doesn't say that safety is follow the rules and you'll be safe. And so that's the way society, or that's the way this idea of safety has always been developed, is just follow the rules. That's what the regulators do. They see a problem, let's make rules for it. I mean, what's coming out now around this time? Sorry for all the paper noise, but what's the new thing on OSHA's plate? I have stacks and stacks of books and papers. OSHA's crystalline silicon rule, construction. And they explain to you the problem. It's a well-written paper. I'm just reading the fact sheet on OSHA's crystalline silica rule. And first thing you have to do is write an exposure control plan. Who does that? The manager. The guy who doesn't work with it, or the guy or girl who doesn't work with it, is writing it. Right? Then you have to designate a competent employee. Restrict housekeeping, and then offer medical exams. This is how they go about keeping you safe from silicon, crystalline silica. Then they want you to train workers on operation. Now, training, I'm all for training. And then keeping records. You got to keep records. You know? So that's OSHA, the regulatory authority on keeping workers safe. That's what they do. They write you a rule. You got to follow it, or you'll be punished. So, mainstream safety, it severely mocks our judicial system. You don't follow the rule, you get punished. And once again, that's not safety. So what did I come up with? You know what I mean? So I thought, we have to teach our people how to be safe. And how do we teach our people how to be safe? Well, number one, you got to break that conformity to the rule. You got to break that way of thinking, and that is difficult. It really is difficult, to where people will protest if somebody isn't punished for breaking a rule. We have already had a couple of successful failures, I call them, at work. That's where a crew will do some work and they'll foresee an incident and they'll prepare for that incident in case this happens. We will do this, this, and this. And guess what? That incident happened. The crew was prepared and nobody got hurt. So it's my motto that I don't care if you burn down line. I don't care if you take people out of power. As long as you don't get hurt and you knew that was going to happen, that's a success. Nobody got hurt. All that other stuff will go away, people remembering the power outage, that'll go away. The line will get built, it'll be put back up, and everything will be good. But if you get a guy hurt, if you get him burned up, that takes a long time. Or worse, the guy gets killed. That's not good. But anyway, so you got to break that mold that your employees have about safety. It's following the rules. You know what I mean? First, you got to break that mold. How do you do that? You design a participatory program or a user-centered program. And what you do is you allow your people to design them. Your frontline workers, not the manager. Like I said, the manager is not exposed to the environment of the front line. They have no clue on what they go through. Even if that manager came from the tools, he's familiar with what they're doing or what the work that they're doing. He's done it before. He or she has done it before. But he's not familiar with the environment that they're in now. Whether tools are changing or methods are changing, he or she, that manager, is not familiar with those methods. This is why they have to get the people's input. Allow them to design it. How do you do that? How do you get people to be on board? How do you get them on board? That's where the social psychology comes in. And this is where we teach people how to be safe. You teach them things. And from what I understand, the APA they want their practitioners to do a better job on educating the public. That's what the American Psychological Association wants to do. So we take the psychology and we apply it. How do we apply it? Well, let's look at the rules. Let's look at the constructs of social psychology. Let's look at conformity. Let's look at normative conformity. Let's look at informational conformity. What does that tell us? Well, normative conformity tells us that people want to be liked. Well, how can we use that in the safety system? How do we get people involved? Well, you take a problem. And I know this about people. If you ask a person to critique your work, almost everybody, you should try this. You know what I mean? Write a letter or write an article, and for the hell of it, ask anybody around you to critique it. And I guarantee you they'll do it. People love to point out mistakes. They will do it. So the same goes if you ask a person for help. If I have this new directive, right? And I take it and I say, hey, Mike. Mike's a frontline worker. He works out in the field. I have this new directive for wearing a high-vis vest out in the right-of-way. And I got to have it done. Can you help me with it? I would almost bet you a paycheck that since you asked them for their help, they're going to oblige. Then what you do is you have them do the work. So you teach them about what needs to happen. These are the rules, and then you end up using a little bit of this construct. You use this thing called cognitive dissonance. So, person says yes. So the person publicly announces, yes, I'll help. Okay, because it's a good thing to do. People like to do meaningful work. So this is a safety issue. Sounds meaningful. It's a good one. High-vis vest on the right-of-way, and keep people from getting hit by vehicular traffic while they're doing their work. And you get them involved, and they do their research, and then they start looking at high-visibility vests, and they find out what's best, and why do they try to figure out the best design for them to use? Because, well, I'm wearing that vest. So do I want the real heavy one when I'm working in Phoenix, Arizona? Or do I want this one? But there's a rule out there that says it's FR. You have to have an FR vest when you're in the utility business. Flame resistant vest. So you try to find the best one for yourself and your guys. And they start thinking about and applying everything to their job on utilizing or building this policy. They think about all the other stuff that you're not going to think about as a manager. Why? Because you have too many other things going on in your life. You have quotas. You have other things that you have to manage. Safety is just a small part of it. Safety is one of your priorities, and it's down at the bottom. My little adage, this little saying I like to say is, safety needs to be a virtue, not a priority. But in mainstream safety, it's a priority. So let's get back to that worker, So then you ask the worker, hey, I got the safety committee going. You want to present this to the safety committee and find out what you're going to do? Oh, yeah, sure. And the guy, he picks out his vest. He finds out how much it'll cost. He explains why he chose this particular high visibility vest and presents it, and it gets pushed through. Bam. Man, management listened to him. Holy cow. Management listened to what he had to say. Sounded good. It made sense. They supported him. That's what managers need to be doing. Managers need to be supporting their frontline workers, not directing them and, not threatening them every chance they get. When it comes to safety, managers need to support them. Then what happens is the new product comes in, and guess what? Just through a little scientific thing called cognitive dissonance will kick in. Cognitive dissonance is basically like a mental balance, right? If you do something that you don't like, you're going to experience a cognitive dissonance because it either goes against your beliefs, and the only way to balance that is to either change your actions or your beliefs. So, when these vests show up, the company will hand them out, and guess what? Guess who's going to be the priority? Guess who's going to be the number one enforcer of that policy? Mike. When Mike's on the job and all of a sudden he's met the criteria to don the vest, he's going to put it on and he's going to make sure everybody else puts it on. What do you think what happens when you include everybody else in those safeties, in the design and implementation of those safety systems? They begin to police one another. Why? Because they were all involved in the design, implementation, the research, all of that on that particular problem. And you're going to end up with, let's say you have 80 employees, you're going to end up with 80 safety auditors or inspectors, whatever you want to call them, as opposed to 2 or 3. That's how you break that conformity of mainstream safety. Get them involved. So are you going to be able to afford to take that employee out of their designated task, what they're hired to do, and get them involved in safety? You better. You really better. Because what we're doing now isn't working. We're still blowing things up. We're still killing people. You got to figure out something. You got to think differently. because what is going on now just simply doesn't work. That's why I'm so mad. That's why I'm so mad at managers, because they think they're so damn smart. And I work for a group of managers now that are totally opposite. So I know they're out there. I know it's possible that we can get this. I know it's possible because the managers I work for now are wonderful. And that's their attitude. We need to do something. That's why they brought me along. That's why they hired me, because they knew I was a different thinker. So one of my slogans with United Safety Technologies is a new kind of safety. And finds out that it's just like safety different, or the new safety that these other guys are talking about, which is really cool. So happy I found these guys. The new view, they like to call it. So that's my rant. That's why I'm so mad. So the new website is up, guys. So go ahead and you can go check it out. www.unitedsafetytechnologies.com. There you will see our new safety glasses, Edge Eyewear, and you can look at all of the different styles that we have: polarized, the smoked, the clears, all of that. We got them up. They're for sale. Go on over. They're proven. The linemen that I handed them out to, and law enforcement officers and firefighters, They proved it. They abused them, and they gave them the thumbs up. So that's perfect, man. So we're gonna go ahead and we open them up for sale to you guys. I give you my word; they will meet your needs and then some. You may even wear them when you're driving your car. They look really good. Go to United Safety Technologies, check them out. Tell me what you think as well. What else is new? Really nothing other than my thesis. I'll let you guys know how that's coming together if you like. But I really want to make a cognizant effort to go ahead and get more of these out. I'm lacking, but I'm just so damn busy. I mean, if you look at my office, it is just research papers everywhere. I have a stack of books that's about a foot high on my desk. And it's getting kind of nutty, but can't wait to get that through, get it published. It's going to be published. We're shooting for Safety Sciences. That's where my advisor gets a lot of his stuff done. And if you, like I said before, if you guys want to hear or talk about something, send me a note. You can reach me at United Safety Technologies. You can send me a note, and I will research it, and we will discuss it. So that's about it. This one was a little long, a little too long. It's almost a half an hour. So I'll promise you to keep them a little bit shorter. So good night. Thank you. And remember, as always, to be safe.